Good morning. Okay, so we're still in our integer unit, and today we're going to work on graphing fractions and decimals on a number line. So directions say graph each number and its opposite. So the number that we're graphing is 3/4. To graph a number on a number line, you're simply going to find the number and put a point at that number. Graph the number and its opposite. So the opposite of 3/4 is -3/4. And that's it. Number 2, graph -4/5 and the opposite of -4/5. So -4/5 is here. The opposite of that would be 4/5. Graph -1 6/10. And its opposite is 1 6/10. Graph 2.5 and the opposite of 2.5. Okay, so 2.5 is not on this number line. But as you can see, we have 1 and 2 down here to the right. Well, halfway between 1 and 2 would be 1.5. So if 3 was down here, this would be 2.5. So 2.5 is going to be halfway between 2 and 3. So if this is -2, then -3 would be to the left, and -2.5 would be halfway between -2 and -3. So now it says compare -1/2 and -3/4 on the number line. Remember that when it says compare, it means less than or greater than. So first we're going to find these numbers on the number line. So -1/2 I don't see, but I do see a fraction that would reduce to -1/2. The fraction that I'm focusing on is -2/4. If you would divide 2 by 2, you get 1. And if you divide 4 by 2, you get 2. So -2/4 is equivalent to -1/2. And then the other number we're graphing is -3/4, which is just to the left of that. So if it says compare, we're going to say that -3/4 is less than -1/2. Compare always means less than, greater than, or equal to. Now the next task is a little tricky, but we can do it. It says find a fraction that is between the two numbers. Find a fraction that's between the two numbers. So I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm going to highlight this space right here. Somehow I have to find a number that is between -2/4 and -3/4. Well, there's really nothing between -2 and -3. But what if I wrote equivalent fractions using bigger numbers? So if I multiply 3 times 2 and 4 times 2, that would get me to -6/8. If I do the same thing with -2/4, -2 times 2, that would be -4. Whoops. Sorry, I think I lost my negative sign there. And 4 times 2 is 8. So now I'm looking at -6/8 and -4/8. Well, what would be between -6/8 and -4/8? -5/8. I'm going to find a funky color so we can tell the difference here. So -5/8 would fall right here on our number line. We're going to practice that some more. So we're going to move on to the second page. First thing we're going to do is compare. Remember in math, when you see the words compare, it means less than, greater than, or equal to. So the numbers that we're going to find are -4 2/3. Find a brighter color. Okay, so -4 2/3, which I don't see. But could I reduce any of these? Would any of these reduce to 2/3? So I'm focusing right here because I know that 4 divided by 2 is 2 and 6 divided by 2 is 3. So this one right here is equal to negative 4 2/3. The other number we're finding is negative 4 1/6, and that's clearly right here. If it says compare, we're going to say that negative 4 2/3 is less than negative 4 1/6. Next task. Find a fraction that is between the two numbers. Well, we have a couple of choices here. I see, so I'm looking at this part of my number line. Find a fraction that's between those two numbers. So I could clearly choose either negative 4 3/6 or negative 4 2/6. But remember, we always reduce. So negative 4 3/6 would be written as negative 4 1/2, negative 4 2/6, 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. So I could choose negative 4 1/2 and negative 4 1/3. Compare negative, so I'm looking right here, compare negative 3 8/100 and negative 3 8/10 on the number line. So first we have to find those two numbers. Well, I clearly see negative 3 8/10 right here. But then it says negative 3 8/100. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a 0.00 down here to the right. And then with my negative 3.1, so I'm looking right here, with the negative 3.1, I'm going to make that negative 3.10. So negative 3.10, and I'm supposed to graph negative 3.08. So that would come just in front of the negative 3.10. So negative 3 8/100 would be right here. If it says compare, they want to know less than, greater than, or equal to. So my answer would say negative 3 8/10 is less than negative 3 8/100. Left is less. Remember, I keep saying left is less. If it's to the left, it's always less than. Next task. Find a fraction that is between the two numbers. Notice it says find a fraction, not a decimal. So these are decimals on the number line, but they've asked for a fraction. So I'm just going to pick, so I'm focusing right here between these two numbers. I'm just going to pick an easy one to reduce. I'm going to choose negative 3.5. So negative 3 5/10 is equal to negative 3 1/2. Okay, last thing we're going to do is compare. It says place less than, greater than, or equal to sign in the blank. Hint, the sign is the opposite of what it would be with positive numbers. So on a number line, negative 1 would be here, negative 5 would be to the left. So negative 5 is less than negative 1. Now, with this next problem, negative 1/7 and negative 2/9, we are allowed to do cross products. So I'm going to multiply 7 times 2. Now, since these are both negative numbers, 7 times 2 is 14, so that's going to be negative 14. And then 9 times 1, that would be negative 9. So now the two numbers I'm comparing are negative 9 and negative 14. Well, on a number line, negative 9 would be here, negative 14 would be to the left. So negative 9 is greater than negative 14. Comparing two negative decimals. So on the number line, negative 0 3/10 would be to the right, negative 0 5/10 would be to the left. So negative 5/10 is less than negative 3/10. Compare negative 1 2/3 to negative 1. On a number line, negative 1 would be here. Negative 1 2/3 would be to the left. So negative 1 2/3 is less than negative 1. Negative 2 2/3 would definitely be to the left of negative 1. So that would be less than negative 1. Okay, so if you have, so I'm looking right here at my negative 2/3 and my negative 5/6. If you have two fractions with different denominators and both fractions are either positive or both fractions are negative, the easiest and fastest way to solve these is cross products. So 3 times 5, negative 15, since both fractions are negative, and 6 times 2 is negative 12. Negative 12 is greater than negative 15. Negative 2/5, negative 5/6. Again, they're both negative fractions with different denominators. Cross products. That would be negative 25 and negative 12. Negative 12 is greater than negative 25. Negative 2/10 compared to negative 8/10. So on a number line, negative 0.2 would be down here, and negative 0.8 would be to the left. Now, take a careful look at this one. We've got two negative mixed numbers. Negative 1 1/4, negative 1 5/6. Because they both start with negative 1, now we have to compare their fractions. So I'm going to do cross products. So 4 times 5, they're both negative, so that would be negative 20, and 6 times 1 would be negative 6. So the only thing I have to look at is the negative 6 and the negative 20. Negative 6 is greater than negative 20. So negative 1 1/4 is greater than negative 1 5/6. All right, last one. Comparing negative 1/3 to negative 1 5/6. On a number line, negative 1/3, so 0 would be right here, and then negative 1 5/6 would be to the left. So negative 1/3 is greater than negative 1 5/6. All righty, that's it for today.